Well, as we go ahead and are beginning to get ready for our next panel, I want to thank our friends at the BIA Ventura chapter for making the time for this important discussion. Affordable housing is as important of an issue as any in our state. I want to commend the panel for again, providing a prescriptive approach to best practices and what actually works to develop affordable housing, like incentives and partnerships. Looking forward to having Peter Gutierrez serve as our moderator. I will say that recently, as I was engaging in a dialogue with the city, I had an opportunity to remind them that their RHNA numbers were going up almost 2.5 times, roughly from 3,500 to over 10,000 units over the next RHNA cycle, and that 65% of those were market rate and 35% were affordable. And so the idea that one would look to address that 35% need, which is vital on the low income and affordable front, by potentially adding $40,000 to the cost of market rate, and essentially putting a chilling effect on the 65% of the market that they're still, again, it's not about just identifying sites. I guess technically it is through RHNA to identify those sites, but it's really the spirit of RHNA is to build those and see those come to fruition. And the idea that one would seek to finance the 35% affordable by adding to the costs and increasing the barrier of entry at the 65% of the RHNA that's market rate really doesn't make sense. And empirical studies have also indicated that when utilizing inclusionary zoning, what happens is it really just moves the incentive away from that city. It moves the investment away from the city. And you see essentially over time, according to empirical study, longitudinal studies of 40 plus cities that utilize inclusionary zoning, you see less units and less activity overall. So then what do we do to address affordable housing? What other approaches are there? And that's what's at task for Peter Gutierrez. I'm going to turn it over to you as a moderator for our great and informative panel. Thank you so much, Peter. Welcome.
Thank you, Carlos, for the introduction and for the introduction to the issues. And we're going to explore some inclusionary housing issues this morning. What works, what doesn't work, what are the challenges with it? And what we want to do is take a look at sort of the real world. How does this affect our builders, our developers? What kind of challenges are they seeing? These inclusionary zoning ordinances come in all shapes and sizes, but at bottom they're all an effort by the cities to increase their affordable units. But is it having the opposite effect? And is it really promoting affordable housing, or is it really disincentivizing housing in those communities where they're in effect? Our panelists this morning include a range of folks in the development and building industry. We have a multifamily developer, John Hrovat from Equity Residential. Good morning, John, and welcome to the panel. We have Donna Deutchman, an affordable housing producer from Homes for Families. So we're going to get that perspective from an affordable builder. And we have Haggai Mazler from KB Homes. And, they build, as most of you know, single family homes. And so, I think we have a good range of perspectives here. And so I want to start with you, John, and ask you, in your experience, do these affordable mandates really work? I mean, from your perspective, are they really resulting in the construction of affordable housing, or builders and developers, are they simply going to avoid the jurisdictions where inclusionary zoning ordinances exist?
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Carlos, for launching us into this part of the this part of the program. So yeah, so a couple things before I jump in. One, yes, I was warned that you never put a spreadsheet into a PowerPoint presentation, and that is what I'm going to do today. So what I'd like to do is we warned, is just really take a quick look at real world and what inclusionary zoning would do. And I'm not here to say no. I'm not here to say we can't make things work, we can't get together. But absent incentives, absent some other kind of give and take, I just want to walk you through quickly what the math looks like. And before we even get to this math, I mean, I'm looking at, I just did the did some math last night, and this year we've underwritten, call it 133 sites, and this is just in LA County. So if we looked at other things down in Orange County and San Diego, but just in LA County, 133 sites. Out of that, we're able to justify making 5 offers. And out of those 5 offers, I think we've got 1 under contract at this point. So just the volume of sites that we look at. And so the math that I'm going to show you is the math that we do on, roughly, all 133 sites. So I'm going to attempt here to switch over to screen share, and let me know how this works when you can see it. Does that work? Do you see a colorful spreadsheet and a picture?
Looks beautiful.
All right, good, thank you. I also never get complimented. My kids that are, in their 20s look at my presentations sometimes and they're like, Dad, you do some really boring crap here. But let me just walk you through the numbers. So I'm taking and I call this a hypothetical project. It's actually not a hypothetical project. So this is in a city, just north of downtown LA. And this is just looking at an 80 unit project. So this is an 80 unit project where the current landowner is sitting there operating a parking lot, and is out to market with relatively close to being entitled 80 unit project, is looking for land, a land payment of $3.5 million, which for 80 units, not anything too egregious. Looking at soft cost, almost $5 million, pretty typical for size of the size of project. Hard cost, that's your your concrete, your wood, your steel, all the appliances and all that good stuff. Financing costs, pretty typical, for the carry during the development period prior to income coming in place on the apartments. So we're looking at total project cost just under $37 million. And so why do I do all this stuff? So out of that $37 million, I'm looking at gross income of $3 million. And I've got sort of fixed operating expenses. This is property taxes, insurance, maintenance, staff to run the building, people to fix appliances and take care of the building. And after taking out my operating expenses, my net on this is projected at $1.9 million. And this is real simple math. I look at that 1.9 million, compare it to my $37 million in cost. And on this project, I can make a 5.34% return. So first of all, this notion of, real estate developers, you're cutting this, crazy amount of profit. This is going through this effort. I'm making 5% on our money. And that's what our shareholders are looking for. And we do it very reliably. And so it's good. So that 5.34 is within the range of what we're looking for projects like this. We typically try to exceed, 5.25% on this hypothetical market. So now I'm going to shift gears and show you what happens when I take this project. So this was 80 units. So, we were with this project, we were going to add 80 units to the housing stock in that city, 80 new homes. This was all market rate, but I just want to show you kind of what the math does when you take 80 units and you take 8 of those units and you make them affordable units. Let me show you what that does. So column B here, this is all market rate, same math that you saw before. And so now I've got 10% affordable with this. So now, even if I go to the point where I provide a zero land basis, so I'm basically telling a landowner, give me your site, which he's not going to, but give me your site. And I look at what that does to my, I look at what the affordable does to my income. So my $3 million of gross income When you take out the income loss on the affordable units, it goes to 2.8 million roughly. I take my 2.8 million, my operating expenses are the same, my net operating income went down, $240,000 or so. And you look at everything else, soft costs are the same, hard costs are the same, your financing costs, that carry is the same. But what that does is with that $1.7 million of income divided by this project cost, I'm not getting to my 5.25% return, even if the landowner gave me the site for free, which, so I was trying to be cute here with the photos, right? So you look at this one, you get a building, you get homes, you get people that get to play in boxes. That's always fun. You get people that, you get to work from home, you get to cook inside your place. And, if there's no give and take and there's no sort of compromise that goes along with it, the site stays a parking lot, which it did. So anyways, I just want to throw this out there. This isn't, a way of saying no, and we're never going to find a compromise, because we do find compromises, and I do, find places to make offers and build and do this. But this is what happens when there's sort of a lack of give and take. And when there is that lack of give and take, I'll move on. So this, this project stops. This will be, number 134, and I'll move on to the next city, or I'll move on to the next site and go build where I can. And this is just the reality of the math that I've got to live with day in, day out, 135 times a year. I mean, I wake up every morning trying to build housing, love building housing. And this is just, not making, political commentary. This is just the math. So with that, I will go back to stopping screen share unless there's any questions on it. Or I'll turn it back to Peter.
Great, thanks for that example. I mean, that shows sort of what what impact these ordinances have on a bottom line. And it's kind of following up on that. Donna, I'd like to move to you to get some perspective from you, sort of following up on this financial side of things. We've looked at the financial hit that can occur. I'd like to get your perspective on sort of financial hits to a project and whether or not they pencil, so to speak, but also what types of projects would work, if you had to take this kind of hit. I mean, what are you left with in terms of what you can do?
Take myself off mute first. Absolutely, Peter. First, there are several hits to a project in terms of affordable home ownership with these kind of jurisdictional requirements. And I want to talk about three really. First is the hit to the project's ability to pencil out, very similar to what John was talking about with rental housing. That's a very real consideration to the builders and whether or not they choose to do a homeownership project in any jurisdiction. As a result, it often becomes a real hit to the jurisdiction themselves and whether or not they're able to accomplish their RHNA goals. If a jurisdiction is not amenable to more realistic ways to accomplish this goal, then their workforce housing and low-income housing will be lacking. And we've seen that all over California really lately. As a nonprofit affordable housing builder, and this is actually behind me, a project that we just completed in Santa Clarita of 78 low-income and very low-income homes. We, Homes for Families, build production housing and on one property. We are currently building 56 units in Palmdale, but we can only pencil out because we get donations, we get foundation large gifts, and we get government funding. Without these subsidies, our model would not be possible. We're building homes between 1,100 square feet and 1,600 square feet. Yet an affordable mandate in a jurisdiction for a for-profit builder, and that's what we're talking about today, typically requires the for-profit builder to build homes of the same size as the market rate homes they're building. it also requires them to do the same fit and finish. And yet it requires the builder to take an enormous loss offset by the market rate homes, and precludes the ability of a partnership between them and a nonprofit, because the nonprofit would have to increase substantially the donations that they would get. A for-profit is not eligible to get these kind of donations and subsidies. So where are they supposed to take the loss from? Their choice is to increase the price of the market rate homes. And that's harming the entire community. Or, as John just said, they move on to a different site, a different city, and everybody loses. So the biggest hit is also to the low-income homeowner or the workforce housing buyers. And the reason for this is that often these homes are being, even if they are built, they're built in a community and of a size that requires considerable upkeep and that are unaffordable to the population they were built to serve. And that's a really important point that I don't think jurisdictions consider. It's not enough to make a home's original price and mortgage affordable to the home buyer. One must consider the cost involved in maintaining the home. In our housing, for example, we, even in the playgrounds, make sure that there are no fall zones that are over a certain height, so that the insurance for the HOA is low. Now, in a regular market rate community, you really can't do these sort of things. And when you do the fit and finish and all of these great things for a home, that requires upkeep. The air conditioning, the energy costs, everything in a larger size home goes up. So all of a sudden, people become house poor very quickly, and they can't maintain their homes. And this is not serving the population. If there's an HOA, their dues are going to be unmanageable, or the builder is going to have to, in some way, increase everybody else's dues. It's just not tenable. We don't want people to become house poor. So what type of projects should jurisdictions and for-profit builders be doing to provide affordable housing? I think the for-profit builders should be encouraged to do what they do best. And I think they do it very well. When you look at a KB home, and I'll let you talk about your own homes, but you usually or often provide many different versions of homes. You've got your larger homes, you've got your mid-level homes, you've got wonderful townhouses, and you're providing a span in many of your communities. And that's what for-profit builders do best. But you should be encouraged to do that by key incentives. And that's where the jurisdictions should come in, providing optional incentives for a range of homes. But the affordable market should be done by affordable nonprofit builders who have the option of getting subsidies. If there is a land trade in a city, if there is some provision for land, that's where it really should happen. The other reason for this is because those nonprofits that specialize in providing affordable homes also provide wraparound services. They provide education, they provide trauma-informed care, they provide the things that move people up the economic ladder. This is not something a for-profit should have to provide. And when it comes to resale restrictions, for-profits should not be given the requirement of following a family over 30, 40, or more years. They're not in the position to handle resales, and nor should they be. So I think that what's happening is for-profit builders are constantly being given more and more responsibility. Things like the art tax, all these things, to make decisions outside of their bailiwick. And in doing that, jurisdictions are placing them in a position to have to hire more and more experts and bringing up their bottom line to a point that they're simply not going to have housing.
Thank you, Donna, for that perspective, which is interesting coming from an affordable housing producer. So I want to move over to Haggai, and then I want to actually jump back to John in just a sec. But so, you know, we know there's a lot of challenges with these ordinances and how they get implemented and their impacts on finances and all. And I think in particular in the for sale segment of the market, it sounds like there are some very unique challenges. And Haggai, you know, you do the single family. And so what I'd like to ask you is how it does or doesn't work with the for sale product. But I'd also like to ask, you know, are there incentives that you could get that could make it work, right? Because we also want to look for the solutions. And John, I want to get your perspective on the incentives as well in just a sec, as soon as we hear from Haggai. But you know, I'd also like to hear what kind of incentives do you think would work? And just to round this out, I'd also like to hear your perspective on the studies that are done to support these ordinances and whether the studies are really realistic.
Peter, I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to BIA for inviting me on this panel. First, John and Donna, I think you spoke really eloquently about the challenges that these ordinances can be for providing new home ownership opportunities. So with the work I do with KB, I look for land and we entitle projects. And many of the projects that we work on have an affordable component. And they're done in cities that don't have an inclusionary housing ordinance. You don't need to have an ordinance in the code to ask for affordable housing. And the reason is, many of the projects we go through have a discretionary approval process. And KB Home doesn't have a problem providing affordable units as long as understood those units come at a cost of, they could come at a cost of the entire project. And I think one of the big challenges that the ordinances can place on a city is that you're really limiting yourself and the city in terms of the collaboration that has to happen between the developer and the city. And so if the city says we need 10% and moderate, we then can't come in and say, well, we can't do 10%. Maybe we can do 7% and then fund the rest through an in lieu fee. You don't have the ability to negotiate and think collaboratively to get the project through. Also, and as Peter mentioned with the incentives, we don't know what incentives we need on any given project. With the single family homes and the townhomes that we provide, we are very rarely pushing density. We're very rarely needing the height to be increased. We really operate in the R3 zone, which is readily available. The type of incentive that would really be meaningful to us is take away that entitlement risk. We work for 12, 15, 18 months with city staff, and we get to the hearings and it's like, well, good luck. I wish you luck at the hearing. We don't know how it's going to go. If we knew from the get-go that the entitlement risk is gone, we had a memorandum of understanding between us and the city, or we went through some sort of process, a pre-application process, and we knew we were going to get entitled, it gives us the comfort to then say, okay, if we know we're getting entitled, the entitlement risk goes away, and it makes it easier for us to provide some of that affordable housing. And I also want to point out that the 55% of all KB homeowners are first-time home buyers. That's a really high percentage. And we look, as Donna mentioned, at providing homes at all income levels. Make sure we can get not only an affordable home, but workforce housing and people who can't qualify for an affordable home, that first-time home buying opportunity. And so I would really recommend against having an ordinance put into place, because we don't know, and cities don't know, what sort of affordable housing need they're going to have in the future. I mean, you have an ordinance in place, you have to decide today for the foreseeable future what sort of affordable housing you're going to need. And we really don't know that. And we also don't know what the incentives we're going to need. So I would just caution cities to just be open and honest and just say, hey, if you want this project to go through, let's have a discussion about what the affordable housing needs we have in the city. And then us as a developer can work and see if we can make those, we can make that a possibility. And I think, Peter, you had another question regarding the type of studies that are used to justify these ordinances.
Yes, I mean, it seems like, and actually, any of the panelists can talk about this. Every inclusionary housing ordinance is backed by a study to determine sort of what kind of affordability can a project take and still receive some level of profit. And it seems to me, and I've looked at some of these studies, but I'm just a dumb lawyer, and I'm not an economist, and they all seem to be like kind of cookie cutter. They all seem to have the same assumptions in every jurisdiction, whether it's a jurisdiction that's at the beach or a jurisdiction that's in the desert or inland. And so I was just wondering, sort of from your perspective, are these studies realistic? Do they have pro formas, and do they really paint a true picture of what it's like in the trenches when you're trying to do a project?
Sure, great question, and I've read these studies as well. So I'm not going to talk about the veracity of the study. You're right. That's for an economist, not a home builder. But I will say that almost every study I've read, there is a line in a mock-up pro forma that says, here's the project economics. And then to make the project work, there has to be a reduction in land value of 30%. And it's right there. And land is scarce. We go out looking for projects. I'm competing with industrial builders, commercial builders, retail, hotel, and they don't have these affordable income restrictions that we have to abide by. And so right off the bat, to make our projects work, we're already 30% less that we can offer on a piece of land that an industrial builder can. And so a lot of these studies, I don't think they really understand the type of financial hit that they are imposing on the existing landowners in your jurisdictions of what the long-term consequences are. And so I would like to see those studies not just rely on the crutch of reduce the land by 30%, or in John's case, reduce the land by 100% to make the project work. There has to be another mechanism by which we figure out how to make affordable housing work.
Thanks, Haggai. John, do you have any thoughts on that? And also, I'd like to hear your thoughts, John, on the example that you gave us. There is density bonus, and there are incentives through that, which is density bonus is voluntary as opposed to something that is imposed. But are there certain types of incentives, John, that could make those projects work? And also like to get your thoughts on how should cities really be viewing these justifications for their mandates.
So I think I'm going to take Haggai's comment as the launching point. So thank you for that. In terms of the incentives, and we had talked about it earlier, right? The incentives are really voluntary. And I was just looking back at a couple projects that I've built, around town over the years, and it's in the neighborhood of, hundreds of voluntary affordable housing units, because there was incentive that went along with it. In some cases, the incentive was, tax exempt bond financing that went along with it. And at a time in the market, that was a very powerful incentive. And I took a 350 unit project at the corner of Wilshire and Vermont. And by, adjusting the product a little bit, adjusting the financing, we're able to take it from 350, add 90 units of affordable, and make the overall project, economics basically neutral or a little bit better, but adding 90 units of affordable. So that's an entire affordable housing building integrated within a building, on top of transit. So, on the incentive side, whether it's financing, and I'm not in that market today for the tax exempt bond financing programs, but, things like state density bonus law, SB 1818 or TOC. I'm working on a couple of projects right now where TOC is effective, right? And it does work, but it's voluntary. I can choose to do it or not do it. That gives me some tools. Whereas, just leaving the starting block with the weight on my ankle, it gets back to, there was a couple of comments about we're not economists. And I think if we're going to be talking about policy, and I was trying to keep today about math because I like math, but if we want to talk about policy, we really do need to listen to the economists, because the economists will tell you, you constrict, the resources going, you constrict the inputs, and, supply is going to be limited. And when supply is limited, you've got limited supply and demand crossover. And if I can't build those 80 units, demand is higher, and the ambient demand in that market is higher. And so if I can find the incentives and I can find the way to make it work, I'm just going to be, providing more units that overall supply. And then the economists that are, you called yourself a dumb lawyer. I'm even worse. I'm the dumb developer. The economists have this stuff. They have it right. When it comes to this level of microeconomics, they have it right. And if it seems like this repeating pattern of the home builders and the apartment builders and the affordable housing builders, you all are going to solve the problem that we're having coming in. No, we're trying to be part of the solution. Sort of taxing the folks on the way in. It's like I don't think we would ever in a million years contemplate, we're going to tax firefighters on the way in to go, fight a fire when a building's on fire. We're trying, we wake up every morning, we try to build housing. I know Donna does, I know Haggai does. Every day we wake up and it's like, how do we build more? How do we build more? We're trying to solve this problem. Give us tools, give us incentives. We can work with those kind of things. Trying to run a race with an ankle weight on, my seller in my hypothetical project, is sitting there and he's happy to sell parking spots every day.
Well said.
So it sounds like the mandate creates more handcuffs, than it does, ability to actually make something work. Whereas an incentive-based program provides probably more flexibility and more ability for the local agency to get what they really are looking for.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your perspectives. I think we are out of time, but again, thank you so much. And Carlos, we're going to turn it back to you. And thank you for allowing us to sit with everyone this morning and share some perspective on inclusionary. And back to you.
Great job, Peter, John, Donna, Haggai. Thank you so much for your insights. I think you can really tell in the audience the passion of we want to do nothing more than to build housing of all types in every RHNA category. And so I think that what you're hearing today is the dollars and cents challenges that John highlighted. I thought that was as transparent of a breakdown that I've ever seen before. Donna cautioning from an affordable builder's perspective as to the challenges of taking a hard ordinance inclusionary perspective. Appreciated Haggai's view on certainty, and that approach of an MOU or a pre-application process that lower than entitlement risk. I think we want to do nothing more than, again, meet the moral obligation of providing housing at all socioeconomic levels. And so I think if those who are in attendance and will be watching this recording in the future, the BIA stands ready to work with you. We have the expertise, as does the staff at cities across California. We just need to work together in finding an incentive approach and approaches that make sense. We don't want to see that that parking lot stay as the picture was there by John. I much rather, as I can attest, the kids loved riding the boxes. So that's for sure. All kidding aside, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights. And with that, we're going to take a brief pause, just about a minute, and we'll be right back with our feature panel. You don't want to miss it. We're going to have our leadership at a state level of convergence of perspectives, the California BIA, the California Apartment Association, and the California Association of Realtors coming up next. Be right back.